Hello, everyone. My name is Anna Jenkins, and I will be doing an analysis of how COVID changed the workplace. I want to discuss options for work settings and identify is remote work the right choice for your organization. Before we dive into current workplace options, let's first go back and identify what was the normal pre-COVID. What did we consider the normal work setting, which most of us are probably thinking Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 in office. We clocked in and out for a lunch break and we had that commute to and from work. Office meetings were, our organizational meetings were typically held in person with some Zoom options, typically only for folks who did reside out of town or the option was not available for them to report to the office. Once we started seeing closures and state of emergencies declared through various states in early 2020, workplace was no exception. Of course, that was considered a gathering space, and that was prevented, and actually, against the law at that point where we could not gather in groups. But we still had to function. We still had to find ways where our businesses and organizations could still succeed, could still offer the services that citizens and residents required, things like electricity, water services, food delivery services, goods. People still needed to buy personal hygiene, clothing. The world did not stop in that sense, but everything that we knew on how what was normal and typical and a reporting structure did change. So again, we do have options now in choosing the right setting for our organization. We of course have traditional return to office where we go back to Monday through Friday in office, meetings in person, and going back to that normal structure that is a comfort to some. We also have the option of total remote work, which, again, never reporting to the office, doing everything virtually, doing everything by phone, and very minimal to no in-person meetings. We also have hybrid models where employees are now being asked to report to the office 1 or 2 days a week, but then are permitted to have that flexibility of working from home a few days a week. So, looking at the above options, I want to stop a minute and just give you time to reflect and think of the above options return to work, um, remote work, or hybrid model. What is your desired workspace? Where do you get your best outcomes? What concerns do you have with any of these options, not just for your employees, but for you as an individual and as an employee? Where do you get your most performance, feel most successful? In a recent article by Forbes magazine, they did a study and showed some data of current workplace trends. So as of 2023, 12.7% of full-time employees currently work from home, while 28% work a hybrid model. They also predict that 32 million Americans will work remote by 2025.
First of all, curse that virus, but bless high-speed internet.
I think, like anybody, it was a bit of an adjustment. Working from home, you have the opportunity to concentrate and be more focused in a way that you naturally can't in an office.
I think it's working really well. And the thought of commuting again and being on the train and the time that I would lose to that.
My office is in my car, in my home, in my kitchen.
So many people started working from home for the first time during the pandemic, and they found that they actually really like it. So that's led to this tug of war between.
As you heard in the video, employees are looking for that work-life balance. They do feel more productive actually as well when they work from home. They feel they have less interruptions. They have time where they can actually spend time with their family. They're home at a decent time, so they're not worried about that 2 hour rush hour traffic at the end of their day. Now let's look at what employers should consider before deciding what's best for their organization. We first want to look at employee engagement and retention. So obviously we've heard the data. We know that employees do enjoy working from home or working remote at least some of the time. However, one thing you do want to monitor is although they are happier and do feel they have a work life balance, they are feeling a little bit more secluded, isolated, and they do not feel quite as engaged with the organization as a whole or their coworkers. We also want to be sure to analyze cost or financial impacts, and we'll dive deeper into that in a later slide. But just an overview, we're going to have some savings in terms of office space, but we're also going to have some expenses. We have to put more equipment in place, monitor productivity measures. So we want to be sure that we're weighing the benefits for our organization. I just mentioned productivity, but we of course want to put things in place to monitor productivity of individual employees, but we also want to monitor the organization as a whole and business functions. Are the business functions able to be performed whether we work remote or in office? That of course should be one of our very first discussion topics and analysis in order to determine, is this even okay for our organization to even begin these conversations? And lastly, we want to be sure that we're thinking of other business or organizational considerations. Is it the appropriate settings? What settings? Obviously, in a healthcare setting where we're doing hands-on patient care, working from home is not going to be an option. However, there might be options of doing, some of our calls, end-of-day meetings, different scenarios where employees can have a little bit of flexibility, but we know that those settings would not permit a work from home environment. Let's now look at some cost considerations. So on the left, you're going to have your typical dollar for dollar amount in terms of cost, things that are easy to demonstrate in terms of an expense. So equipment, going remote versus in office, it could save us on equipment in some scenarios in terms of office chairs, furniture. But when we are actually thinking of computers, telephones, printers, if we are truly requiring our employees to do their job at home and consider that their work office, we are going to have to supply those resources to them and cover those expenses. Possibly even internet service. I've seen organizations that if they're requiring their employees to be logged in on a Zoom call throughout the majority of their day, they're going to pay for their cell service and their internet service to cover that expense. Programs. We also want to make sure that we have good communication platforms, HIPAA security measures, programs that where they are no longer in that set space in an office and under one roof, that we can make sure that their needs are being met in terms of communication, but also that our programs, our organization is protected, that we have everything in place to keep our resources secure, our confidential information secure, and then they have a platform where they can have all of the tools that they would need to perform their job. So other set expenses that we could see some significant cost savings would be office space. No longer required to pay for those large buildings to house multiple employees, pay for utilities throughout the building, and that's obviously going to have some cost savings. And travel. Whether this is business travel, where if you require frequent travel to other states for your company, or if we're talking about just daily commute to and from work, if you do reimburse your employees for drive time or mileage. Some other costs that maybe aren't as easy to prove out in a dollar amount, but they are going to contribute to expense would be training. So how do we effectively train employees whenever we are not seeing them in office? Are we going to have to pay more hours of non-productive time for someone to sit on a Zoom meeting to actually thoroughly train an employee? Productivity measures. Again, this can impact our costs. If we are not running efficiently, if we do not have tools in place to monitor our productivity, and then time. Time can be a savings, of course, for the employee and also the organization. If employees are able to start their day at an earlier time because they don't have that commute, this could also benefit the organization and not just the employee. In this research study, they did an analysis of pre and post-COVID employees, specifically that performed factory work, and they based their performance on a scale of 1 to 10. So 10 being their top performers, they identified pre-COVID and post-COVID how often these performers were meeting their level 10 performance level on what percentage of the time. So Before lockdown, these top 10 performers were meeting that measure 71% of the time, over 71% of the time. However, after lockdown, they did see a decrease in that number. They were seeing this drop to 63% of the time. So there's a lot of conflicting data and messages out there. Here's an example of this just in these news articles that demonstrate all of the different views of whether return to office or remote is the appropriate setting, whether it's dying or it's coming to light. There are multiple different angles. But no matter which way you look at this, we need to understand that change is constant. Even after we decide what is best for our organization, more than likely we will have to make another change and another decision at some point to change our processes and even change our structure as a whole to accommodate this work-life balance, remote work, whatever we want to call it. We want to make sure that ultimately we are accommodating our employees and providing a productive and streamlined process for our company's outcomes to be met. In summary, only you can decide what is best for your company, but remember to weigh your options carefully. You should make decisions for the right reasons. You should be aware of consequences, both good and bad, specifically when it does come to remote work and pulling back that benefit. That can be challenging and really difficult for employees to accept. So something you need to think through. Understand desired outcomes and set goals. Your employees can be successful only if they have a set goal and understand what you truly require of them and expect of them. So no matter which setting that you choose, being sure to set those set goals that align with your organizational goal or mission is very important. And evaluate progress along the way. Knowing that you likely will have to change. Even once you've set a structure, you're probably going to have to make some adjustments to ensure that everything runs efficiently.